Good afternoon. We start our next event. This is Roundtable. How can Ukraine take the third place in Europe in terms of internationalization of small and medium-sized businesses? Our guests are Ksenia, Lyapina, Chairman of the State Regulatory Service of Ukraine, Dmytro Shemyakin, Director of the Reform Support Team at the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade of Ukraine, Igor, Burakovsky, Director of the Institute of Economic Research and Political Consultations, Anton Shulyk, Executive Director of Civitta Ukraine, Vyacheslav, the General Director of the Union of Entrepreneurs of Small, Medium and Privatized Enterprises, Dmitry Yablonovsky, Deputy Director of Center for Economic Strategy. Moderator is Dmytro Lyvch, Head of Analytical Department and Project Manager with EasyBusiness, and also Kateryna Shapovalenko, Economic Analyst of EasyBusiness Analytical Centre. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We are glad to greet you all here. Today we are going to speak about internationalization of Ukrainian SMEs and why it is important for Ukraine, for enterprises, and for all of us. We would like to start with the simple things. What internationalization is. This is more than about export. It can relate to three forms: trade, cooperative, and investment form. If we are speaking about trade form, this is export, import, and other foreign trade economic activities carried out by SMEs of Ukraine. If we are speaking about cooperative, we are speaking about joint enterprises and opportunity of cooperation with foreign companies who may become partners for Ukrainian SMEs. If we are speaking about investment, this is about attraction of capital for SMEs. This is really important because in modern society, when they speak about internationalization, everyone says that Ukraine should stimulate export. But Ukrainian companies should be included into added value networks of the world, and this is important for economy and enterprises of Ukraine. For the economy, this is important for investment, foreign investment, and to stimulate the activities of the countries, and to include Ukrainian companies in the added value networks of the European Union and the world. When we are speaking about enterprises, this is really important to create new employment places and opportunities to create added value by these enterprises. Once again, if we are speaking about Ukraine as a country where there are opportunities. In Ukraine, we have many competitive advantages. The stabilization of macroeconomic situation after 2014 and increase in the positions in doing business ranking for 36 points and structural reforms that are ongoing in Ukraine. And the attitude to reforms is difficult because there is no land reform and other important reforms, but there is reform of healthcare and pension system, education reform, and stimulation of economic development on the whole. And in Ukraine, we have highly qualified and relatively inexpensive workforce. We have cheap national currency that provides competitive advantage in foreign markets for Ukrainian enterprises, and also there is demand for capital, for loans, and this creates also advantage at the international markets. If we analyze the level of internationalization of Ukrainian SMEs, we will see such a picture. Ukraine is at the lowest level in Europe, and we are going to discuss this problem today during this roundtable. And also, EasyBusiness prepared a document on this aspect. The mission of EasyBusiness is to create best conditions for business in Ukraine. And about our programs, to improve business climate, to improve access to markets and the protection of property rights, and to stimulate the development of markets. Our achievements starting 2014. We put much effort in order that Ukraine improved its position in the rating for 36 points, and also in cooperation with the State Regulatory Service and with the Ministry of Economic Development, we've reached the effect of $200 million in savings for the economy and the budget. And also we prepared 50 documents to improve the public policy and regulation. And this will improve integration of SMEs in the networks of value-added networks. And you may see two main documents. The document of public policy. These are recommendations that can be implemented, and the document that allows Ukrainian exporters to easily enter markets of Europe, and also trainings that were carried out for SMEs in the regions. Several words about the document on public policy, what our team analyzed. We used classic approach to formation of recommendations about public policy, and we analyzed economic and financial aspects, and also regulatory and non-regulatory environment for SMEs, and we formed a methodology to choose countries in order to analyze international experience of 5 countries of Europe, and we will tell you later why we chose these countries and the criteria, and also the number of recommendations that will allow Ukraine to take the 3rd place in the ranking, and why it is important to stimulate the development of SMEs and to improve their access to international markets. Several words about second document. This document is about how to enter European markets, the EU markets, and we spoke about association agreement and how Ukrainian and what procedures should the entrepreneur undergo to enter the market, and also the readiness of our entrepreneurs to enter the market. And we described the instruments of help for business that were created concerning access to finances, and about access to proper support of that influence the development of SMEs and ability to enter those markets. So why it is important to analyze the activity of SMEs? Because SMEs create 99% of economic entities that are registered. This is 73% of employment. Third, SMEs, this is about 60% of added value in Ukraine economy. And if we are speaking about export, it's not so good for SMEs. 30%, this is the part of SMEs in the some export of Ukraine. 8% is the number of companies who have export intermediary, and this is really important. And we understood it after consultation at the regional level with business, and 3% is the SMEs with international capital. That is about 10%. So this level of internationalization is not acceptable, and proper conditions for business and internationalization of business should be created. Also, we should state that state bodies of power during the last 4 years did more than in 27 years of independence, and many strategies were created, including SME development and stimulation of economy and the improvement of business conditions, but this is not enough for internationalization of SMEs. And I would like to give the floor to Kateryna Shapovalenko, our economic analyst, and she's going to tell you about this in more detail, about the methodology for this research on public policy, what are regulatory and non-regulatory conditions that should be improved, and how we chose the countries to analyze the activity. Yes, we are going to tell you about our calculations. We assessed regulatory and non-regulatory environment. What we mean when we say about regulatory environment? First of all, this is permitting procedures, whether it is easy to get the license or other documents in order to export. Next, protection of property rights, and also customs procedures, and work with the customs broker, also administering of VAT, and also foreign and international payments. So access to resources, finances, knowledge, and technology. These are non-regulatory environment indicators. So we needed to get some estimates. So we had data, information, and surveys among business, and they assessed the access to these resources. They said that access to financial resources is about 20%. So there were several questions about what financial resources are used, how easily to get bank loan. Based on this assessment, we formed a complex assessment about the access to these basic resources. And we understood that in Ukraine, access to regulatory resources and also the state of regulatory environment is not really good. And we studied international experience in order to understand how to improve the situation. First, we considered all European countries. We have data on them. They are the members of OECD. And OECD, they have a policy index, 9 indicators. One of them is the level of internationalization of business. And taking into account these figures, we range these countries where the best conditions of doing business and how they influence internationalization. We chose 5 top countries: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, and Portugal. And in these countries, we studied in detail regulatory environment, 5 principles, and also the programs that of the EU at the national level, and how the system is built and how it helps SMEs to enter foreign markets. Based on these recommendations and our research, we formed our recommendations concerning, first of all, 8 main areas: the improvement of regulatory environment, the improvement of non-regulatory environment. Let's start with regulatory environment. First, this is the simplification of authorization procedures. While surveying SMEs, we understood that they say that the number of operations, foreign operations, procedures and regulations on them, they should be reduced, and also state expertise, an electronic system of licensing, and also there were some improvements in sanitary certificates, hygienic certificates issuance, and we should continue to harmonize Ukrainian legislation with EU. And also we consider the increase of intellectual property rights protection, and this is really important for those SMEs who want to enter foreign markets, and there should be improvement in the protection of intellectual rights, and also there should be proper coordination of local legislation with the legislation of the European Union. Next, customs control. The majority of recommendations, about 4 main points, This is a preliminary clearance, and also the customs cost of and the simplification of verification of certificates, and also simplification of audit and control. And we propose several instruments how to do this. The most important is harmonization of legislation of Ukraine with the regulations of the EU. Also, the improvement of qualification of customs bodies, because business complained that there are delays in the customs offices because of low qualification of officials, and that's why the process of export to EU is in delay. So this can be resolved by the increase of qualification of personnel, and also there can be an automatic system of registration. Fourth and fifth points about increase of transparency of administering of VAT, and also the also about international payments. They should be improved because they are too much regulated, and we should approximate our legislation with the legislation of European Union. Also, we provided recommendations to improve non-regulatory environment. This is about access of finances, knowledge, and technology. If we are speaking about finances, the main problem of Ukrainian business is it is difficult to provide evidence of the solvency, and also bank crediting is rather costly, and there are high risks concerning export activity, and they would like to have to lower these risks. We may create there can be proper crediting from the state in order to finance SMEs, and also we considered Estonia and Latvia and Germany experience, and they created special accelerators to provide venture funding. And also there are tax stimulus for citizens for co-financing of SMEs. If we are speaking about annihilation of risks, there can be some export credit and investment guarantees, and also insurance of export activity for SMEs. If we are speaking about the access to knowledge and information, there are several programs that are implemented successfully, and they allow to overcome this problem. But also we should improve the qualification of officials and workers, and to provide aggregated information to SMEs, how to export, what steps should be made, and where to submit the documents. So all this information should be collected in one place. In Lithuania and Estonia, there are such platforms with aggregated information, and SMEs may get all necessary information there. About access to technology and innovation, the main recommendations that were provided from international experience, there are special vouchers for technologies and innovation in Europe. So this is money that can be used by SMEs first to create their own websites, or to spread advertisement, or to any other activities concerning marketing and promotion of products. If we are speaking about innovations and technologies, the states provide innovative vouchers that help to certify new technologies and innovations and to get property rights on them. Also, many platforms are created in order that SMEs could communicate with universities, and based on this, build and introduce new technologies and new methods. In order to understand how our recommendations influence on the situation concerning internationalization, we developed a complex instrument and complex index of internationalization of SMEs. So two sides, regulatory and non-regulatory environment. We have 5 indicators for regulatory and 3 for non-regulatory environment. In each indicator, we calculated indicators, and this information was taken from official surveys, enterprise service of the World Bank and EBRD, and based on this data, we were able to assess the status of internationalization 2013, how it changed in 2015, and using forecast data of IMF, we were able to understand the forecast, how the countries of Europe will develop concerning internationalization and how Ukraine will develop without our recommendations and with our recommendations. Here we may see that we placed all recommendations that were formed in our document, how they will influence on improvement of the level of internationalization of Ukrainian business. We may see that if in 2015, according to our estimates, the level of internationalization was about 0.45 score, and 1 is the maximum and 0 is the lowest. So Ukraine was in the middle, and when recommendations were taken into account concerning regulatory and non-regulatory environment. So in this case, it will increase up to 0.73. If we consider European countries, in the first column, we see the rating of the countries in 2015. First, Estonia, and Ukraine is at 28th place. If we forecast the data 2020, we will see that Ukraine have low chance to change its position. But if we introduce recommendations developed by our team and our research, Ukraine will be able to get 3rd place according to the level of internationalization of Ukrainian business of SMEs. So we believe that these recommendations will improve regulatory and non-regulatory environment of Ukrainian SMEs, and this will beneficially influence overall economic situation in Ukraine.